Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday to you all. It is good to be back with you on a Friday. Thank you, Megan, for those kind words, and Kathy as well. So next week, in case you missed it, I will be out. I will not be, excuse me, doing live streams next week. That's why you should go watch the Kingdom and Last Days series from a couple years ago that I mentioned to prepare for next when I get back the week after. Anyway, my wife and I have to help with some family, her parents, and as they make some transitions in life. They are elderly, and we need to help them. So thank you for those prayers and well wishes. And we went through this with my parents, and some of you have been there. So anyway, I appreciate the kind words. It's good to be here. We haven't seems like we haven't talked, I don't know, on a Friday in a while. Maybe it's just last week, but we're going to talk about some political things going on. We haven't discussed that for a while. But something else just popped up on my X feed earlier this morning that got my attention. So last weekend, as you know, I was traveling to Canada to teach some brothers and sisters in Montreal. And that just made me remember that tomorrow's our partners meeting. So if you are a Cross to Crown partner, hope to see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. my time. That's Mountain Time. And we'll talk about all the things. So as I was traveling, I was yet again aware of so many of the Lord's blessings upon humanity in terms of technology and some things that we take for granted. On the way back, Sunday night, I flew into DIA, Denver Airport, and because of thunderstorms and things that kept changing our flight down here to the Springs, they moved our gate 4 or 5 times, moved start time because at one point we had a plane but no crew because flights had been changed and canceled and so on. And then they moved us to another gate, and we had a crew and no plane. And I was supposed to be home at I think 9:30 p.m. Sunday night. I got home at 1 a.m., something like that. And all that's frustrating, but it's still remarkable. And I don't want to take for granted the fact that I was able to get into an airplane and fly to Montreal, Canada, city, I don't know, is it 1,200 miles away from the Springs? That's probably not accurate, but it's over 1,000, I believe. Fly to another city and teach and dialogue with other Christians about New Covenant theology and the gospel and so on. And they were broadcasting to anybody who wanted to watch on YouTube. And they were doing it in 2 languages. I was speaking in English, but a brother there was translating because we were in Quebec, and so a lot of French-speaking people there. So he was translating, and so there were members of the congregation who had little earpieces in, and they were listening to me. But then my friend was translating into French as I was talking, and there was somebody else there that was able to translate for me if they had questions and so on. Technology, and I could go on and on and on about technology, but especially I was just, aroused again by the idea of just getting into this vehicle and traveling that far relatively quickly. Well, today I saw in my feed, rocket travel is just around the corner, apparently. I didn't know this was happening. Maybe y'all did, but I didn't. So SpaceX is working on Starship, and I've heard of the plans there to get to Mars, but apparently they are also working on travel across the world so that you could get from, say New York to Sydney, Australia in an hour. Imagine that. This is via the guy, the feed, I think his name is Mario Nawfal, Nawfal, I think is his name. I recommend following him on X. He's got a lot of good information on there. So imagine the video that he showed was you get into a boat and the boat takes you out to the rocket launch pad. You get in the rocket, blast up into space, and land. You've seen SpaceX's rockets that are able to land on the same pad they left from. So you land on a landing pad in another city or on another continent, and then a boat picks you up and takes you to the mainland, and there you are. Can you imagine taking a rocket to Thailand and being there in just such a small amount of time? It's coming, folks. And then, of course, you add that on to the full self-driving that apparently is going to launch on schedule next month in Austin, Texas. They're already roaming around Austin. There's a couple of cars apparently with no driver. Things are happening at a rapid speed. I saw some other reports of CEOs of major companies talking about how AI is going to drastically reduce their customer care departments, and it's happening at such rapid pace. So I find that fascinating, and it's just one more example of how technology is improving our lives. So are you aware of those things that we take for granted constantly? Be thankful. Life is getting easier and better, and we have more tools at our disposal than ever, and so many wonderful things. Imagine the trips to go see friends and family again. To when my children were my daughter and her husband were serving overseas. I've told you in the past they were serving in a dangerous place, so we had to keep pretty careful tabs on how much we talked about it. It was 14, 16. Well, I didn't make the trip. We were planning on it. 16, 18-hour plane ride, I think. Imagine getting over there in an hour or two. That's fantastic. Daniel says, rewatching your Roman series. I love it. Cool. Glad to hear that. Kathy says she has the Kingdom series queued up to watch next week. Excellent. Sauna says, just flew across the ocean 100 years ago. It would have taken weeks by boat. Yep. And it took you, I forget, you said you were in Holland, was it? So it took you, 16, give or take, 16 hours, depending on layovers and things. Imagine flying in a rocket, getting over there in a couple hours. Megan says, what? News to me. Yeah. Kathy says, I kind of doubt I'll ever take a trip via rocket. Yeah, I know. You just never know. Christian says, talk about major jet lag, rocket lag. Well, maybe you wouldn't have it so much. Well, I guess it depends on how you keep your sleep schedule when you get over there, right? Sauna says, took me way too long, 24 hours, because we flew through Portugal. Yeah. Again, imagine that being reduced to a couple of hours. Crazy. All right. Well, anyway, keep your eyes open and be thankful. The Lord is expanding humans' knowledge of this earth that He's created, and life is getting easier. I'm just not even going to talk about, just briefly mention, look up Neuralink. We've discussed that in the past, and apparently they are very close to their first trial in a human to cure blindness. Just let that settle in for a minute. My mom was blind. This hits home for me. So anyway, so many wonderful things. Technology is doing some great things. All right, well let's shift gears here before we get to the main thing I want to talk about. It's the end of a month. Tomorrow's the last day of May, so that means Sunday is June 1. And let me just ask you, looking back over May and April if you want, have you improved anything? Have you progressed in anything? We talk about health. Have you made some improvements in your health? On this trip that I was taking, I spent a lot of time in several airports, and observing people in Montreal, and it just hit me yet again how so many of us appear unhealthy. And I look at some of the elderly and their health, and I think how many of their problems that they are experiencing in late life could have been alleviated or missed altogether if they had made different choices when they were younger. I don't mean when they were in their teens. I mean in their 40s and 50s or 60s or 70s. I saw another report just the other day of a guy who I think he was 82, and he got serious about health finally and started lifting weights and eating well, and in a short amount of time had lost fat and put on muscle, and he was doing better than ever, and he started in his 80s. So are you improving in your health? Have you made progress in the last month or two? I think all of us should either be leaner or stronger. Maybe some of you are don't need to improve much, but most people I encounter would do well to either be working on getting leaner or getting stronger. And if you haven't done the research to see how much damage body fat causes, because the stuff that you're carrying on the outside, and this is not about appearance, although I don't think appearance should just be neglected, but this is not about appearance. If there's visible fat on the outside of your body, what we don't recognize is how much of that is around all of our organs and the damage, the cancer, the other problems, chronic health disease, and so on that occurs when we have fat through our inside, through the body that we can't see. So if you haven't done any research on that, dig in. It's not just about how you look. It's about health and in the future. And then, our muscles deplete, and we need to strengthen our bodies so that as we give way to mid-age and old age, we are getting stronger. So pick something in June and either get leaner or stronger, and create a plan. But we need to do this. So look back. Have you improved your health? How about your wealth? We've talked about this: investing, budgeting, making better financial choices. I know some folks told me after I did a live stream on investing that they were digging in, and several people did. Several people reached out and told me the changes they were making. How are you doing on that? And have you given thought? I told you before, I think what we're doing here in the U.S. is going to create a great opportunity, probably the second half of this year, certainly next year, for wealth creation, and take advantage of it. So if you need to tighten up your budget, spend money more wisely, or invest and learn about investing, get after it, make some progress. Or how about some of the other things that we have talked about? Have you been productive in May? Have you been useful? That is an underappreciated virtue, it seems to me. Be useful. Can you look back and say, I was useful to my friends, to my family, to my spouse in some way? Have you accomplished anything? This isn't the most important thing on the scale, but I think I told you at the beginning of the year, one of the things that I am pursuing is getting my classical guitar chops back. That was my major in college, and for a couple of decades or so, I hardly touched my classical guitar. I played a lot of music, a lot of guitar, but just not classical. So I've been working on that, and slowly we talked about plodding along and just 10, 15 minutes a day improving. And here it is, the end of May, and I'm pleased with my progress on classical guitar. I still haven't reached the level I was after a semester in college when I had much more time to apply to it. But on the other hand, I've got decades now of musical knowledge and wisdom. I'm improving faster than I did the first go round. But anyway, another pursuit has been recording music. As you know, my son released his album a couple of years ago, and I helped him on that. And he's got a few singles that came out before that. And I've written quite a few songs, and I have in vision a children's album. And now that I have a granddaughter, I have been reinvigorated to finish writing those songs and record them. And I decided before I do that, I have another song that I wrote and recorded many years ago, but I never released it, never put it out for anybody to listen to. And the technology, recording technology, the studio that we have is so much better than what I had then. I decided I'm going to re-record the entire thing, and I'm going to release it and let anybody who wants to listen to it, listen to it. It's as my son-in-law said, it sounds very early 2000s-ish. It is. That's when I wrote it and recorded it, so it sounds like that. And I was going to update it. I thought, nah, I like it the way it is, so it'll be a little bit of a retro, oldie feel. But anyway, so I decided I'm going to carve out some time each week and work on it. Well, just last night, I finished everything except the vocals. So I have re-recorded every note of this song. But I look back now, and I started that, well, I don't know, a few weeks ago, more than that. It's like, I'm just going to chip away at this, and I'm almost done. It's just one of those things. I say, yeah, I set my mind to accomplish something, to be productive, to make something happen, and I'm doing it. And, that's what I'm talking about. Now, again, that's somewhat trivial to some of the accomplishments, but the idea is, are we pursuing accomplishing things? Are we being productive? I don't know if that song is going to be particularly useful, but it is producing something. So as you look back at May, can you see some things you've accomplished? I finished up the study of Revelation and taught through 1 Corinthians 15 and resurrection of the dead. Now, set aside the importance of that as looking at God's word, just as a man, and that being part of the garden that God has put me in. I talk about, Adam was put in a garden, and he was told to cultivate it. Well, teaching God's word is part of the garden. It's one of the gardens that God has put me in. And he said, here, cultivate this garden. And I can look back and say, okay, I have accomplished, first time ever, preaching through Revelation and doing the study on 1 Corinthians, going to another city and teaching there. I have things as a man. I look back and say, I did accomplish some things in this garden. This garden is more fruitful than it was at the end of April, because I have put my mind to it. I've worked the land, so to speak, and I have some teaching series to show for it, and the responses I've gotten from people saying I'm learning and I'm being challenged, and even if they disagree, which happens, I'm provoking the thoughts and wrestling with the scriptures. So you all aren't teachers necessarily, but can you look back and see that the garden that God's put you in, you have made some products, you've produced some things. Does that make sense? How's it going? Let's see. Look at a couple comments here, and then we'll get to the other topic. Megan says, I can only imagine how expensive all these new forms of travel will be at the beginning. Yeah, that's for sure. That's why, the rocket travel may not be something we all experience. It's not going to be cheap at first. But Daniel says, as physicist, as a hobby, I am following unification of general relativity and quantum mechanics, and a new paper says that gravity is a force, and 4 tachyons creates a graviton. That's cool. That's the kind of stuff, we need people like you understanding those things and learning more about this world, and how do we use that to our advantage as humans. Oh, Soda says, I was thinking the same thing. You're talking to Megan. I thought that'd be funny if you said to Daniel. I was thinking the same thing. Probably not very many of us thinking the same thing Daniel just said there. And how marvelous God, who is the best physicist we can understand, even small his handiwork. Yep. The thing is, he's embedded all of these things into creation that he wants us to find them and use them. Be useful. Sana says, I just started learning Portuguese. I wanted to for a long time. Finally got going. Excellent. Very good. Learn particle physics so you can teach me. There you go. Trying to strengthen my glutes after a fracture of the neck and my femur. Oh, that's right. I remember you saying that. Keep at it. Slow strengthening. Exactly. Kathy says, I will anxiously await that music. Music is my kryptonite. Well, we'll see. As I was listening to the vocals and singing a little bit last night, I realized, this didn't seem so high 15 years ago when I recorded this. That's funny. Yeah, oldies is now 2000s. Yeah, I know. That's no. Where is Dog going next week? Assume you meant Doug. Yeah, I'm going to be traveling to take care of my wife's family with her. All right. So last thing I want to talk about today. We discussed some weeks ago careful thinking, and we've been walking kind of through that. And today I was just reflecting on some political things going on, and I thought let's be careful how we think as we hear media reports all the time. First of all, we must continue to cultivate a skepticism, maybe even a cynicism toward the things reported by those who make money reporting them. And I would say this is also true for X. I don't know how many of you are on the X platform. It's my my favorite place for news and social media. Really, I'm not on Facebook much, or even YouTube comments, as some of you know, because you put comments on there, and I usually see them, but I don't respond very often. It's just not my thing. And for partners, that's why we do the Zoom meetings, so that you have my full attention for a couple of hours in those meetings. But on X, they have created a way for people to earn income by engagement. So if you are a profitable X account and people engage with you, they repost it and comment on it and so on. I think the business model, as I understand it, is the more engagement across all of the accounts on X, the more money that X makes. And so they are giving you a portion of the profits if you are deriving lots of engagement, which is great. I really like the business model. However, that also means that people are pushing for engagement. And so just like the corporate media, the legacy media, the CNNs and MSNBCs and Foxes and so on of the world will do whatever it takes to drive viewership so that they have bigger numbers and therefore they can charge more for the ads they run. Money still drives a lot of people on engagement. So the temptation there is, especially if you start making some good money with it and then quit your other jobs and say, this is my full-time job. Now you are forced, at least most people are, to do whatever it takes to drive engagement because that's your income. And that's where the temptations come to, have those sensational stories that will get people talking and interacting, say whatever it takes to drive that engagement. So anyway, across the board, we just need to be skeptical of people who have an incentive to draw your attention, a financial incentive in particular. And we certainly know if you trust any of the major news networks, I say this in love, you're just foolish. Whether it's Fox News or any of the conservative news and with Breitbart, if if you're driven by financial gain, at least for me, I'm going to hear you with doubt. Now, the liberal media, I think, has completely exposed itself or themselves. I don't know that conservative media is that much better. But have you seen the stories of Elon, for instance, getting kicked out of Doge? Someone sent me an article yesterday, or a headline. Elon basically removed from Doge and so on. They were making a big deal of it, and a lot of the leftist media is saying negative things about all this. Well, that's all just a lie. This was planned from the very beginning. There was a limit to is 130 days that a civil worker like him is allowed to hold a position like that. And he is still going to be an advisor to Doge and to Trump and all that. And the point is that the media just takes this story and runs with it, and they just don't care whether it's true or not. We saw this with the Fine People hoax all the way back to when the media, and they still say this to this day, politicians and media say this all the time, that Donald Trump called white supremacists and Nazis fine people. And all. It's all a lie. It's so easily disprovable. But it just happens again and again and again. So you have to create a healthy skepticism, no matter who you think you can trust in the news realm. It should be guilty until proven innocent on every story. At least that's how I try to live. And I don't mean to question everyone's motives, but I just don't trust what I see. The most obvious one right now is this whole thing with Biden's cognitive ability. Have you seen Jake Tapper? Apparently he wrote a book, and he's trying to expose the cover-up of Biden's mental decline. And he's going on show after show. Again, he's got a financial incentive here. He's trying to sell books. And I'm assuming he was already paid a significant advance to write the book. And now he's got to go out and hawk it. For him to say he doesn't understand why this wasn't exposed by the media until now, it's just laughable. He was one of the biggest defenders. There are so many videos that you could watch of Tapper defending Biden, and now he's acting like he was lied to and that the other media are to blame for the cover-up. And I think, is he just a bold-faced liar, or does he really believe the lies so that he's convinced he's telling the truth? It's a remarkable existential observation for me. Just watching do they just get in front of the camera night after night after night and read what's on the teleprompter, and it doesn't register what they're saying? Does he really not think that he was defending Biden's competence when anybody watching Biden walk across the grass or speak, it was obvious he was not competent to hold the office. Disagreeing with him is a whole other thing. I mean, I disagree with a lot of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Obama with their policies, with their perspective on things, but they were not incompetent. They were mentally capable of doing their work. I just think their policies and their perspectives are bad for our country. But that's not the conversation here. The conversation here is, was Biden capable of doing what he wanted to do? And the obvious answer was no. And it's difficult to see somebody like a Jake Tapper and say, is he lying through his teeth, or does he believe that he actually wasn't part of the cover up? Anyway, point is, for us, we've got to be careful. That's obvious, but there are far less obvious lies and deceits. Just be aware of who you trust in social media, in the media, and the news reporting, and so on. Again, especially if they have a financial interest in what they're saying. Which leads me to the final thing here. So I'm sure you've seen some of the debates between guys like Thomas Massie and Rand Paul and Trump on the tariffs and all that. Here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but coming back to the idea of careful thinking, I think we have left our founding fathers' vision for the U.S. government a long time ago. I remember a few weeks ago, I was in D.C. I was in Virginia for a wedding, and then we spent a day in D.C. And there again, just being around the Capitol, the White House, we went through Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, and I've read a lot on the founding fathers in the last few years. Again, second time around. They built our founding documents, the Constitution and so on, with a deep cynicism for governmental power. And I think it was Patrick Henry who said, God help us if we ever pay our politicians. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if he were here today? So we've left our moorings. We're so far. We've taken a rocket and gone not to just another continent, but to a different planet. We're already, on Mars, away from planet Earth in terms of leaving the foundation. So I'm all for smaller government. I think they should abolish income tax. Certainly abolish the Fed. We should. I would love to see a complete stripping of so much of the power that Congress has taken. So when I hear someone like Rand Paul and Thomas Massie speaking against the bill that the House just passed, and the damage it's going to do to our deficit increase and all that, and what they're saying is, this bill is just like all other congressional bills. We're just doing the same thing they always do, which is creating inflation, and we're going to go bankrupt as a nation. All that, and it's all true. And so they're going to vote no against this bill because, in their view, it's no different from the Democrats' bills in the past and so on. And I appreciate those two men, and there's others like Ron Johnson and so on. I appreciate those who are, saying we're not going to vote for this because, in principle, it's increasing the deficit. However, for my sake, from my standpoint, Trump has earned my trust that he has a plan and he understands this. Now, I know the argument, spending went up significantly in Trump's first term, and that's where we're heading here. I get it. I have heard him say he understands that we must reduce spending, that is part of the plan, and he appreciates the DOGE cuts, at least the what they put forward. So I'm telling you how I'm thinking through this. You may have a different perspective, and that's great. The bigger thing here is just to say, as Christians, think well and consider as many possible alternatives as you can, and always be careful of your favorite commentator pushing you in a direction or not. So bottom line, I just realized what time it is. The bottom line for me is, most of the time I would agree with Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. But we have a president, in my opinion, who, for the first time that I can recall, shows a willingness to do the hard things that need to be done to change the system. So I'm willing to give him the latitude to do what he thinks is best with the tariffs, with the one beautiful bill, as he calls it, and so on. Whereas I would say that Massie and Paul and folks like that, they're standing on principle, which is good, but naive, in my opinion, to what it's going to take to change things. I mean, they voted against every bill. They voted, in principle, they voted their conscience forever, and nothing has changed. Right? Their votes don't change anything, and they haven't been able to persuade anybody to do anything that needs to be done. Trump and Doge and Trump's cabinet, they appear to me to have the right targets in their sights. So do you at least do you sense, do you feel the weight of the sort of dilemma that I find myself in, agreeing in principle with these two congressmen, and yet thinking the only way truly forward to get to where we need to get to is someone like a Trump who's going to do some short-term things that seem contrary to those principles, but it's the only way to actually accomplish what these other guys want. I could be wrong. And there are a lot of things I don't know about this. We are at the mercy of media in some ways. However, I like the fact that we can hear directly from Trump, and he speaks a lot, sometimes too much, and we can hear directly from Massie and Paul and hear their rationale. So I just, again, I'm not trying to persuade you to my view of that political decision right now. I'm mostly, I see Christians online, I hear Christians in private conversations all the time, sort of just talking, repeating what they hear their favorite commentator say, or their favorite congressman or whatever. And that people do it on the pro-Trump side as well. And we shouldn't do that. You don't hear me just repeating everything Trump does is perfect and great. No, I question him. I try to question what he's doing, like I question everybody else, and try to work through what is the real ramification of this. But we have to, and this is true for every interaction, even that you have with your friends and family. We have to work through the words to the meaning and the intent, because especially with Trump, he says a lot of things for rhetorical effect and for persuasion that, if taken literally, it's awful. But when you start seeing directionally what he means, think, okay, I see where he's going. Yeah, I'm with him or whatever. So I would just, all this to say, think. Don't just talk. Don't just parrot what someone else says. Think about these things. And for my money, in this situation, I would love to see Trump be able to carry out his plan and see where it goes. So anyway, I don't know if that's helpful. That maybe that was just me thinking out loud here. Aaron says, Trump has been the most forthright politician in my lifetime, and he's still fighting on the issues he campaigned on. I agree wholeheartedly. I agree. He's very candid, and he is doing what he said he would do, which I appreciate. Dale says a blunt instrument is better than a precise theory. Yeah, there's an old, I always forget if this is D.L. Moody or who, but somebody, one of the Moody's, somebody was, I think it was a Reformed guy, was chastising Moody's evangelistic practices. And Moody was asking him about his own. And basically, he doesn't ever do evangelism. He just, critiques, as so many theologians and rhetoricians do. And Moody, I may be getting the names wrong. I forget. I think it was Moody. But anyway, he said, I like my way of doing it better than your way of not doing it. There's something to that, it seems to me. Sana says it's like voting principle versus voting for the lesser of two evils, maybe. maybe. Um, yeah, again, I agree. We are, as a nation, we are very near bankruptcy. And Trump, in his private enterprise in real estate building, is not afraid. He leverages, right? He uses debt big time, more than I would be comfortable with, probably in any business endeavor. Maybe depends. There are nuances of that, but what I think he understands as a businessman, he understands priorities. So I'd put it this way. So Sana, you're helping me think through how I want to say this. Paul and Massey are speaking out of just principle, regardless of the current situation. Trump understands, I think, and we'll see if he pulls this off, priority. And he said, migration, illegal immigration has to be stopped. And these trade deficit with other countries have to be more equal, and reducing taxes. So he's saying, look, all of these things, you've got to put the fire out before you draw up your architectural plans. That's not a good analogy. Huh? I have to think that through. But right now there are fires burning, and that's not a good way to put it either. Trump is prioritizing the greater dangers, it seems to me, whereas Paul and Massey are kind of living in their in their abstract, principled universe that is ignoring the issue. There's a good analogy out there, but I can't think of it. I don't know what that word is. Was there a death or a birth in the family? No, just some elderly decisions and changes that have to be made. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for your kind words. Glad you're all thinking through this. We will see you in Monday plus a week to get into 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And for the partners, we will see you tomorrow. It's not too late if you want to become a partner. There's a link in the notes, and you can join us tomorrow for that discussion. Take care, everyone. Grace and peace to you.